Here are the 7-inch vinyl singles that were released in Japan in the 1980s. There were 17 singles released during the 1980s. So the first single released in Japan was in January 1980, and that was For Crazy Little Thing Called Love. And the B-side was Spread Your Wings Live. As most people know, all Japanese releases were issued with a vinyl single in an Electra paper sleeve and a separate lyric insert, doubling up as a picture sleeve on the front. The second single released in Japan was Save Me, backed with Sheer Heart Attack Live from the Live Killers album, and this was released in April 1980. The next single from the Game album was Play the Game, and had a human body as the B-side, and the lyrics as well. Nice thing about these Japanese releases is the extra Japanese text that you get for the titles of the songs. The next single was Another One Bites the Dust, and had Don't Try Suicide on the B-side. The fifth and final single from the Game album, released in Japan, was Need Your Loving Tonight, in this rather nice live photos picture sleeve. And on the B-side was Rocket Prime Drive. The first single released in 1981 was Flash's Theme, aka Flash, backed with Football Fight. And from the Flash Gordon album. The second single released in 1981 was Under Pressure, a duet with David Bowie. Very nice sleeve there, and should have maybe have been used worldwide instead of the plain black sleeve. And on the B-side of this was the Queen-only song Soul Brother. The first single of 1982, and from the Hot Space album, was Body Language, with Life Is Real, Song for Lennon on the B-side. And this was released in April 1982. The second single from the Hot Space album, released in Japan, strangely enough, was Staying Power, and it had Calling All Girls on the B-side. Quite a strange combination there compared with other Electra territories. And that was released in July 1982. The fourth single from the Hot Space album was Backchat, and surprisingly had Las Palabras de Amor, Words of Love, on the B-side. Again, a really nice cover with the striking Japanese text along the top. And this was released in October 1982. And the final single from Hot Space. There were no singles released in 1983, and the first single of 1984 in Japan and worldwide was Radio Gaga, and the B-side here was I Go Crazy, and lyrics to both tracks on the back there. And this was issued in February 1984, and also had an accompanying 12-inch vinyl single too. The band had now signed a record deal with Toshiba EMI for their product to be released in Japan, and this was the first. The second single from the Works album was I Want to Break Free, and the B-side was Machines or Back to Humans, and this was issued in April 1984. The third single from the Works album was It's a Hard Life, and had Is This the World We Created as the B-side, and lyrics to both tracks on the back there. And this was released in July 1984. So the only single to be released in 1985 was One Vision, backed with Blurred Vision. And this was the first time that a Queen single was released in a proper picture sleeve, rather than just a lyric insert. Still with EMI, and the lyrics on the back of the sleeve. And inside the sleeve was also a lyric insert. First single from the A Kind of Magic album was A Kind of Magic, and this was released in June 1986 and was also available as a 12-inch vinyl single, and included A Dozen Red Roses for My Darling on the B-side. And also enclosed was a lyric double-sided insert. The next single to be released in Japan, and as you can see, had the same picture sleeve as the previous single, Kind of Magic, which seems very odd considering all the artwork they could have used. And this was issued in October 1986 and had Who Wants to Live Forever as the B-side. And inside was a double-sided lyric sheet. And that was the final single released commercially in Japan. And it wasn't until nearly 3 years later that I Want It All was issued, but only as a promotional single on 7-inch vinyl. And harking back to the older days when there was just a lyric sheet included as the cover. This was issued in May 1989 and had Hang On In There as the B-side.